Hello, welcome back to another episode of Welcome Christ Podcast Show, where we inspire the masses to become financially free while building God's kingdom. On the podcast today, we have Mr. Chris Hanna. Hope I said that right. Mr.
hmm
Chris is a former blackjack player and is currently a financial coach for UFC fighters. In this podcast, we'll be discussing the difference between investing versus gambling. So thank you for being here, Mr. Chris.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me, Dami. I've been listening to your podcast, really enjoyed it, and I just appreciate the opportunity to come on and talk.
No problem. How did you get started in this journey of entrepreneurship?
Well, I think that when I was younger, I just really, I always wanted my independence, and so I was working regular jobs all the way through high school, even college. But then after college, I had the opportunity to make my first sort of real decision on my own outside of the influence of my parents, let's say. And at that point, I had the opportunity to take a job on Wall Street or go play blackjack, because I had been learning and studying and practicing blackjack and counting cards for the 6 months leading up to my college graduation with my college roommate. And like I said, I just had always wanted my independence. And so I said, this is probably something that I could do together. I could probably work a regular job during the week and go play blackjack on the weekends. But I really wanted to see if I could do it just through blackjack alone, see if I could start paving my way in, entrepreneurship. And it's certainly, I've just been continuing down that path ever since.
That's well said. So what led you to want to become a professional blackjack player?
It's a combination of wanting to make money on my own, also loving adventure and just, anything that is kind of exciting. And also I had seen the movie 21 back when I was 14 or 15 years old. It's the movie that's based on the MIT blackjack team from back in the 80s. I don't know if you've seen that movie. Sorry, you have or haven't?
I had not.
Oh, okay. It's an interesting watch, and it romanticizes what really happened. Of course, the guy gets the girl, and it's a scary, ordeal when they get caught. And so it's yes, it's Hollywood, but it was my first introduction to the idea that you could actually play blackjack and win over the long run when you play a certain way. Let's just put it that way. Like, you've got to play perfectly. This is not just, let me make a couple plays and a couple bets and see what happens. No. This is very strategic, playing perfectly. And once like I said, I saw that movie when I was 14 or 15, couldn't gamble then, or play rather. I couldn't play. So eventually, once I finally did turn 21 and was able to gamble, that's when I started looking into it more seriously and started doing it.
That's well said. So I'm sure while you were the professional blackjack player, you was able to see how easy it is for people to get addicted to gambling. Gambling. So how would you explain that? Like, what did you learn about people in addiction that they have to gambling?
It's really interesting. I played at tons of casinos for hundreds of sessions and hundreds of hours. So, you spend that long in any number of casinos, you're going to see every type of person, from the most addicted to the, richest person that couldn't give, a crap about whether they won or lost thousands of dollars that they're playing with. And unfortunately, I saw people get very angry, more than I, would have liked to have seen. Just people that, it's funny because they kind of look, they're everyday folks, you and me. It's not an intelligence thing. This is an addiction like other addictions where you get caught up in, and I don't understand it, so I don't understand it on a deeper level, but it's something that you just can get caught up in. And I've seen people that look ordinary, and you might even be having a conversation with them, but next thing you know, they're losing 5, 6, 10 hands in a row, or, they're throwing craps and, or on roulette, and whatever might happen. Eventually they start getting frustrated, angry. Sometimes they start cursing, yelling at the dealer or whoever it is. And it's unfortunate. Yeah.
Well said. So I'm guessing with you, you did it for about 2 years or so. What made you make that exit, out of professional blackjack?
It's sort of it's kind of a combination of things. One of the major things is just my priorities. So at the time I was, really focused on training Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which is the grappling martial art in MMA, that, the way they fight in the UFC. And that was really my main focus above all else, above, taking care of my finances, even my health. Like it was just Jiu-Jitsu first. And I was training almost every day. Sometimes it was every day, a couple times a day. And blackjack, you've got to play a lot. You've got to do a lot of traveling, and the swings are wild. It's really more of an investment than it is a sustainable source of income, unless you just have a massive, massive bankroll. So for us, we were doing fine, and investment was growing fine, but it just wasn't enough to really sustain ourselves to, adults on a blackjack bankroll. So we eventually just turned and looked to other sustainable and more consistent sources of income, where we weren't constantly having to travel, every which way. And that was ultimately what led me to exit out of it.
And you said two of you guys, so like your brother, sister.
It was my college roommate, actually. Yeah, we met, I think, second year in college maybe, and then by the third and fourth year we were living together. And he was also a numbers guy. So, and not only was he a numbers guy, but when you are counting cards and playing blackjack for profit, it's really ideal to not be doing it by yourself, because two of the biggest giveaways, because it's not illegal, but casinos are allowed to kick you out if they catch you. So two of the biggest giveaways are your bet variation and your sort of where your eyes are. Like if you're never taking your eyes off the table, or making sure that you see every single card, like the combination of those two is a very easy tell for the casino that you're probably counting cards. When you play with a partner, though, you can alternate bets and alternate who's keeping track of the count on the table. So it's really ideal to be playing with more than one person.
I also wanted to go right to something you just said in regards to that it could be seen as an investment. Because oftentimes when you talk about blackjack or casino, is more of a gambling perspective. So how could playing blackjack could it have been an investment?
Yeah, the blackjack, like every other game in the casino, is subject to an edge. Just meaning, let's say from the casino's perspective, for every dollar that a customer walks in and bets on every game, they're going to make a statistically, mathematical based amount over the long run. For many, and there's a very specific edge that is calculated for every single game, whether it's roulette, craps, blackjack, you name it. Even slots, they have an average edge over the long run, and it's just a percentage of it's an average percentage of everything that's wagered. So, for example, with roulette, the casino will make on average about 5% of every dollar that's wagered. So if every $1 million that the casino collects in roulette, bets, they're going to make about 50 grand on that game specifically. With blackjack, the edge is very small. It's actually, with the same $1 million that the casino collects, if everyone was actually playing correctly, they would only make 5 grand. Is that right? Yeah, 5 grand as opposed to 50 grand. So the edge is much smaller. It's actually about 0.5%. And not only is it 0.5%, but the edge actually fluctuates. Like it just changes constantly from a positive edge to a negative edge to a higher positive to a lower negative. And it's just constantly changing as the game of blackjack is played. When you count cards, you can actually keep track. The count of the cards is directly related. It basically tells you how the edge is changing at any point in time. So the more you play with a positive edge, which is what you can do when you're counting cards, the more money you're going to win. And that's ultimately why it's an investment. Whereas, regular folks that are not counting cards or playing really almost any other game in the casino, the more they play, the more they're going to lose.
Well, that's well said. That's definitely well said. So now that leads into my next question. So how would you go about explaining the difference between gambling and investing?
Yeah. First, let me highlight that gambling and investing is not determined by what you are buying or selling or placing a bet on. There are vehicles, like let's say the stock market, that are, I would wager to say, more commonly used to invest. And there are vehicles like blackjack that are more commonly used to gamble. But simply playing blackjack or simply buying a stock does not automatically mean that you are gambling or investing. The major difference is going to be your knowledge of what you're actually buying into or placing a bet on, the risks associated with it, your long-term thinking, like if you were to take the same action over and over and over again, will it eventually lead to more money in the long term or less? Or do you really not know? Because if you don't know, it's truly a gamble. And yeah, bankroll management, your knowledge and your long-term thinking.
Well, that's well said. And as we both know, gambling or just placing bets, whether it's sports betting, um, a lot of these meme stocks or meme cryptos have been, rising. And I guess I want to ask, what is your thoughts on these different things and all these different opportunities that is now leading people to get so caught up in gambling, but they think they're investing.
Yeah, well, I think the availability of all of all these different things is really awesome and exciting. I think it's cool that we can trade more. I wouldn't even necessarily call them assets, although in some ways many of them are. But yeah, just the availability of so many more alternative investments, I think is cool. The fact that it's so easy to get into makes it very susceptible for people to gamble with it. So, and so basically, as easy as it is to create an account on Coinbase or Robinhood or whatever you prefer to use, you can easily start buying and selling crypto. You can easily start buying and selling stocks, and options, and foreign exchange currency. And so there's just a lot of different ways that people can get into it. And because it's so easy, people do start to gamble, which is not a good thing, but simply the availability of it, I think, is great.
Great. That's well said. And I want to ask a question, how can someone know that they're gambling and not confuse it for investing? So I feel like that's something very important that sometimes people think that they're making money, because they're making money, because they don't, because they're making money kind of investing and they're necessarily not a gamble.
Right. Okay. So let's clarify that, because you're exactly right. You could make money from something, even quite a lot of money, and for quite a while, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's an investment. Like, people go on long gambling winning streaks, no matter what game they're playing, and they could easily win a whole lot of money for a while, but eventually, if it's truly a gamble, if they truly don't have the edge, they're going to lose over the long run. So more practically speaking, you want to think about first, just what are some of the more traditional ways that you actually can invest? So investing in the stock market, not just buying and then selling 6 months or a year later, but what purchase could you make that you could hold on to for the next 100 years even? If you are comfortable buying something or investing in something and really not touching it for the next 50, 100 years, that is more than likely going to be an investment. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to work out. So one of the other things that you have to be pretty honest with yourself about, like if you're looking in the mirror or just flipping your phone around and you were talking to yourself.
That is very well said. That is very well said. So, just reading your biography, I came across that you felt physical pain and mental exhaustion while you was going through the judicial process and training, which had you to reevaluate everything around you. And I want to talk about that. What made you like? How can you talk about how you was feeling, and what made you like? Okay, is this something I want to do long term?
Yeah, there was a period of time for about 6 months, I was sleeping on a training partner's couch, and it was maybe like a couple inches too short. And if you've ever tried to sleep on a couch that's a bit too short, I was so thankful that I had that to sleep on, because the alternative was sleeping in my car, which I ended up doing after I left the couch. But yeah, it was just like, it was rough the way that I was kind of going about the decisions that I was making in life. Like, it was jujitsu first, training first. Every job and sort of gig opportunity that I took still enabled me to do it working around afternoon training and evening training. And so, after I slept on a couch for a while, I was in my car for a little while, hopping around to different Airbnbs, sleeping on other friends' couches. I got to a point where I was looking at just the cheapest possible, because I wasn't making money from jujitsu. And when you hear that if you do what you love, the money's going to follow, I'm thinking like, all right, well, how can I, if I train harder and get better, eventually I can start offering private lessons and doing these, going to tournaments and making money. But that takes time, and it's not specific to jujitsu, but it's, that happens with a lot of things, that when we try and turn our passion into a profit. And for me, I was exhausted, mentally exhausted, physically exhausted. And I had to be honest with myself and say, look, this is not right. Like you can't just be living off Taco Bell dollar menu. And, it got to a point where I just had to be honest with myself and start making different decisions.
Well said. And that leads me to a question, because oftentimes, like you just said, oftentimes people try to turn their passion into profit. And just like, in business on average, for a business to become profitable, it takes about 5 years for a business to go profitable. And my question is, oftentimes people get started in different tasks, different adventures, and there's always two things that happen. Either that they don't get started, or if they do get started, they quit too early. So I want to talk about what made you say, okay, this right now, this is probably not the way for me to go about this. Yeah.
It took self-reflection. So when I was waking up with a sore neck and just feeling injured and exhausted, running around doing literally sometimes like 4 different things, 4 or 5 different gig work in the same day. And whether it was driving for Lyft and Uber, or I would teach after school classes, I was tutoring, I was babysitting, and then still training hard at like a great jujitsu academy. So there was some self-reflection involved where I just, I don't know. I guess I just realized that this is not the way forward. That there are in theory, I could have stuck with it. I could have continued with it, but I think I just realized that it wasn't ultimately what I wanted more than anything else. I was confusing my love for jujitsu with my love for just having the freedom to be able to train. And once I realized that, I was like, oh, really, I want the freedom to be able to train more than I want to train itself. And because I didn't have that freedom, I wasn't, focusing at all on my finances, on work, on any of that. It was not truly what I wanted. And so I had to, just take a different path.
When you started getting, focusing your path, what are some things you do to get your finance together?
Well, for starters, I had to just put more attention on making money rather than treating it as a byproduct of something that was just going to come, because I was doing what I loved. And in doing so, I looked for, first of all, just what jobs or even contract opportunities I could take that would allow me to make more money. And I found one within just a couple months and a couple calls. I found I found an opportunity where I could actually make more money consistently. And from there, it was actually about a year after that I looked back on that prior year and I had no idea where my money went. And it felt kind of strange and a little disappointing because my degree is in finance and economics, and I've interned at a multi-billion-dollar hedge fund for a couple summers. And I've just been around like professional finance, corporate finance, but that does not at all target actual personal finance. And it was just kind of frustrating to look, I just didn't know where my money went. I didn't really know how to continue building my wealth. And that's what led me into this rabbit hole of personal finance, which is, was, I don't know, maybe 5-6 years ago now. That's some of the things that I had to, those are some of the things that I started with.
I want to quickly ask, how did your faith in Christ, help you stay focused through this journey, whether it was a rabbit hole of, your finances down, or whether, it's actually having that self-revelation to yourself, like, this is not for me.
It was in the lowest and most frustrating times, I still had peace. And that was not something that I think I would have had prior to, I think this was in, it was like end of 2017. And this is right around the time where I kind of put jujitsu down after a couple of years of pretty intense training. And I know this sounds crazy. So I was raised Christian, Protestant, and we went to church fairly often. Not every Sunday. We went to church often enough, and I never. It wasn't. It even sounds crazy for me to say this, out loud, but I didn't even understand what the Gospels were when, as I'm 24 years old or something. I didn't realize that it was actually Jesus speaking his words, and that there wasn't a whole lot to it. Like, these Gospels are actually not terribly long compared to the rest of the Bible. And I thought, oh my gosh, I want to know what he said. And so I read Matthew all the way through in one sitting, like, go up, get some water, go to the bathroom. But as soon as I started, I was so, I don't know if this is what people mean when they say like they were, born again or whatever it was, but I'm like literally in tears reading this whole gospel. Like, it was the most amazing, life-changing thing. And I have this Bible that has Jesus's words in red, the rest of the text is in black, so it was also very helpful to see this is what he said, this is what, what was happening besides that point. But for, that was, 5 years ago now. And there have been a lot of ups and downs. I have never taken a traditional job, and entrepreneurship is, and thankfully, right, like this is it's not a pity party, right? Like I grew up middle class, like I had stable parents that are together, and, but it was tough to try and, pave my own path. But in all of the most frustrating, most tiring, times, I always had my faith to fall back on and to continue to guide me. I truly feel like my faith is unbreakable. Like that is carrying me forward every single day.
That is definitely well said. And I want to definitely tap into what you just said in regards to you never actually had a job, you became a financial coach. I want to talk more about that. So being the fact you never had a job, how did you go from being this big rabbit hole to now, you're a consultant UFC fighters, you're a consultant entrepreneurs on how they go out managing their money?
So I did have traditional jobs pretty much like all growing up. I started when I was 12 years old refereeing soccer games, and I was a sales associate. I worked at this place called Bounce U when I was really young, just running parties for this inflatable bounce place, and even through college. So I had traditional jobs growing up, but after college, I really just wanted to learn how to make money on my own, and that's what I focused on. I took a contract role with a financial literacy organization. This is within a couple months after. My life started to change after I read the Gospels. It just went in a different direction. I met my girlfriend, who I've been with now for the last 4+ years. But yeah, I found this opportunity with a financial literacy organization. It was fairly early on, but it was just one gentleman in particular. He was teaching, running these classes where he hired instructors to teach after-school financial literacy classes to kids in grades K through 12. And he started off with just a handful of schools in the DC, Maryland, Virginia region, the DMV, and started to expand more and more and more. And I came on board to help him expand. And I did that with him for a couple of years. It was going well. Eventually, I wanted to, and it was during that time that I started to make a little bit more money and started managing it, and actually failing to manage it first. And then through trial and error and study and experience, I started managing it more successfully. And between that and teaching everything that I was teaching with the kids, I had a moment where I said, or several moments where I said, I really want to do this with adults. Even in some of the after-school programs, the parents would come up to me and ask me questions about their finances. And so it was my migration from teaching kids about it to teaching adults. And UFC fighter. So I have this background in jiu-jitsu, and I've been a fan of the UFC since I was pretty young. So I knew that they were only fighting a couple times a year and only getting paid a couple times a year. And so when I thought, well, who's a group of people that I could really enjoy working with that actually need help managing their money, they were the first group of people that came to mind. And I started reaching out to them, started working with some, and now I've been expanding to more and more. Anyone who is ambitious and resonates with my message, I'm willing to work with.
That's well said. And I want to definitely talk about, the UFC fighters, because, as athletes, where I was an athlete myself, and in college, athletes, we have this, I guess, mentality, we get big checks, when we do reach a certain achievement, but we don't necessarily know how to manage it. So how did you go about, sitting down with each individual U.S. fighter and like, okay, this is how you go about managing money. This is how you go about budgeting and so on.
There's a couple of key steps. So first, it starts the same whether you are fighting in the UFC or whether you have a regular salaried job, and no matter where you are, you have to sort of just understand where you are right now, and you can start with something that I call a money to survive. So rather than thinking about a budget or any of that, like how much money do you actually need to survive on a monthly basis? And I mean, survive a moderately healthy and peaceful lifestyle. So not like, what if you went and started renting an apartment with roaches and rats? And also not, what if you live in the most luxurious, house? There's a fine line, and you've got to be honest with yourself. But, what does it take for you to live a moderately healthy, peaceful and healthy and peaceful survival on a monthly basis? And I'm going to be putting up a easy PDF template on my website. I don't think it's not up just yet, but I'll put that up there. Or if listeners want to reach out and they listen and they hear this and they want it and it's not up on my website, I'll send it to them. But you start there. How much money do I actually need to survive on a monthly basis? Next, it's this is more specific for fighters. Let me plan out roughly 6 months of those months. Let me plan out 6 months of living expenses, because there's so much unpredictability in the fight game. Fighters can get sick or injured, and their opponents can get sick or injured. There's a number of things that can happen where the fight doesn't actually go through. And sometimes they don't even get fights from the UFC. There's just so many fighters on the roster that they may not get a fight when they want to. So step one, sort of take stock of where you are today, plan out living expenses for the next maybe 6 months. And once you have that taken care of, then you can start to tackle the more traditional ways of actually growing your money. So paying off terrible credit card debt and other consumer loans, whether it's, no matter what it is, starting to invest in the stock market or whatever your preferred method of investing is, and actually reinvesting back in yourself to make yourself a more valuable asset so you can make more money with your time and mind.
That's very well said. And that leads me to, asking, what are some costly financial mistakes you have seen people make?
Not paying attention to your money. If you just don't really understand what money's coming in, if you don't understand where your money is going and what you should be doing with your money, that money is leaking. And not only that, but if you are not proactively deciding what to do with your money, you have no idea if you're actually using your money effectively to meet the goals that you want to meet. Because we can all sit here and say we want to have, a couple $1,000,000 by the time we retire. Actually, I hope you say that you want a couple $1,000,000 much sooner than that, because it's very possible. And in doing so, though, you have to turn it from a wish into like a actionable goal. Like, you've got to focus on it and reverse engineer what it actually takes for you to get there. And there are ways that you can use your money to actually make that happen. Again, what we were just saying, investing in yourself means paying for knowledge, paying for, and that could be experts or coaches or mentors, people that can teach you what to learn, tell you what not to focus on, and really just accelerate your process and the knowledge that you need to, we'll just say, make more money. There's skills you can pay for, courses and workshops or webinars, things that you can actually learn and practice something to get better at. Because even if you know what to do, if you can't actually execute on that, if you don't have the skills to do it, you're still going to fall short. And you can use money to pay for your time, because even if you know what to do and you have the skills to do it, some things, like, they just take time to build. And if you are constantly working, and if you don't have the energy coming home from a 9-to-5 exhausting job, and you've got kids and all this stuff, like, you're not going to take your life to the next level. And so if you can save up enough money to where you can work less or not at all for a period of time, depending on your circumstances, that will enable you to actually work on the things that you need to take your life to the next level.
That is very well said. That is well said. And I definitely want to go back to something you said earlier. That kind of drew my attention. You said to basically focus on how much money you need to survive and live a very healthy, moderate life. And I find that very quite interesting, because oftentimes when you talk to financial advisors, you just read about, the tip is always, live below your means. Like, live as I won't say not comfortable, but you're living so low that you're not necessarily
Yeah.
comfortable and healthy. Like you're eating noodles in a cup, or which has a lot of
Yeah.
sodium. Like you're missing out on certain socially that can help you grow. So I guess what led you to come up with that that concept of moderate and healthy. Because oftentimes when people talk about financials, like you have to sacrifice, your health has to be a certain way, and long term that could be very drastic and very problem for a person.
Yeah, I think on some level, I just started to realize that this is a journey that even if you are, especially if you are ambitious and you have lofty financial goals and, call it business goals or athletic goals, whatever they are, it takes time. Anything worthwhile that is going to be something great, it takes time to build, and it could take years to build. And unless you have someone that's literally guiding you every step of the way, which is very rare, without paying quite a lot of money to do that. And even then, no one's going to be as invested in those goals as you are. So like there's always risk involved, and you never know how long it's going to take or what steps are going to, what's going to happen. You have to be thinking about how you can actually sustain yourself while you're working towards your goals. And these, like, you can't be trying to sprint your way to success. You can't sprint your way to everything that you want to achieve and accomplish. Like, you've got to think about, how can I sustain myself in a moderately healthy and peaceful way so that I can eventually reach my goals.
As well said. And I guess that leads me to the next question. How do you personally go about investing?
Right now, I'm solely focused on investing in myself. A couple of years ago, I just started to realize more and more what that actually meant. Some of the things that we talked about, investing to acquire more knowledge, more skills, and more time. And so a couple of years ago, I started thinking, I can do a lot more with my money today in paying for books and courses and experts to teach me and learn how to make even more money today. Then that money would be, that would be more helpful to do that than just throw it in the stock market, let's say. Because even if you start, like, people are so quick to say you should be investing, like, invest early and often. And yes, I agree with that, but don't just throw everything in the stock market. Don't just throw everything into real estate. Like, learn how to make more money so you can invest more into these assets that are growing without you needing to actually participate in them. So for me, I'm investing in myself right now. Like, I'm investing in myself so I can continue to build my business in a way that I really enjoy, because I can go off, I can get a job, I can even bring on more clients in ways that I don't enjoy. Like, when I first got started, I got all my clients from just cold outreach. Like, I was reaching out to people, we were hopping on calls, and that was fine, but that was not a business that I wanted to practice for the next however many years. I wanted to put myself out there more so that people could find me and reach out to me. That's what I've been doing. That's why I've been getting out more on social media, sharing more free information and saying, hey, this is how I think. This is the information that I'm, using in my life, and it could help you if you want to use it. So all of that, though, has been investing in myself: books, courses, experts.
As well said. And I definitely want to talk about that in detail. Because you mentioned that it's easy to tell somebody to go invest in the stock market. It's easy to tell someone to go and invest into real estate. But with all of these things, you definitely need money to start. And I'm sure you're paying attention to the news. A lot of people have invested a lot of these different stocks, different properties. But as you read more news, and you realize that a lot of people are stuck because they have so much cash, caught up in all these different investments. A lot of these newbies, in the past, from 2020 to now, a lot of people came in, a lot of people got exposure to things that more accessible. And as a result of that, they put in money and listen to all these people, and now they kind of like stuck, and their account is down. These real estate properties are not doing as great as they expected. So, what would you say to someone? Like, should they focus? Like, is it more important to build enough capital first, then get into all these different investments, or invest as you go?
If you want great things in life, you've got to learn how to make more money. And that is not universal depending on what you're trying to achieve. Like, there could be Like if you just want to run the fastest marathon, okay, I mean, money will help you because you can spend more money on recovery and more time so you can actually train and whatever it might be. But generally speaking, if you're ambitious and if you want financial freedom sooner than later, you have got to learn how to make more money. And it should not on your own, like through your time and skill set. That doesn't mean that you can't build a business that makes you more money, but like even building a business, it takes skills and experience, and oftentimes coaches or mentors or experts to help you in the areas that you're not familiar with. I mean, marketing for me was like I didn't even know what that word meant a couple of years ago, and here I am trying to build a business. Like I really just had to be honest with myself and say I don't know the first freaking thing about marketing. And so I've bought courses, I've spoken to experts in marketing, and I've learned more about it. But yeah, you do not. Yes, your money can make money for you, and that's great. But don't get so caught up in passive income before you are putting a massive, massive amount of attention on active income. You should be able to go out in the marketplace and command thousands of dollars from people because of your skills or a product that you're offering. It's just, if you want more money, you've got to focus on how you can actually become a more valuable asset yourself.
That's well said. And that was definitely well said. And I definitely wanted to touch back into you saying you're right now you're focusing on investing in yourself. So I guess what some courses or some books that you would suggest to people who want to use this time right now to work on themselves and grow?
That's a great question. I'd have to think about that because I love reading. I didn't always love reading, but I love reading over the last like few years. And it'd have to be, I guess, for a more specific purpose. So like for me, I'll just share what I'm kind of reading more recently. The Common Path to Uncommon Success by John Lee Dumas. He runs Entrepreneurs on Fire, one of the biggest podcasts, in the world. And I'm not running my own podcast at the moment, but I'm speaking on a lot. And it was just a really interesting book. And, I don't know if the book's 15 or 20 bucks, whatever it is, but that's easily something that you could pick up. I'm trying to think what else here. Mike Michalowicz, he wrote Get Different, but he also wrote Profit First. And he's a fairly well-known name in the business space. And I really enjoyed that. Again, that's a marketing book. Alan Dibb wrote the One-Page Marketing Plan, phenomenal. Nicholas Cole wrote The Art and Business of Online Writing. So if someone comes to me and says, what specifically can I read to work on this particular thing, I can give a better answer.
Okay, so I guess a specific, in terms of investing. So someone who wants to learn more about investing, what are some books that you would recommend?
I'll recommend Rich Dad, Poor Dad, because that's what opened my eyes to the mentality of, we'll call it the rich versus the poor, or the poor and the middle class, which he says are basically the same. That I've grown a lot since. Like I read that and thought, oh yeah, I've got to listen and pay attention to every word. And there's phenomenal information in that book, but it's not all that's out there. And I don't agree with everything, but that's a great place to start. Also, people love I Will Teach You to Be Rich. I didn't come across that book until a bit later in my personal finance journey. And, but I think Ramit Sethi has a great, that's the author. I think he's got a great mind and approach for personal finance, where his focus is not on everything that you can cut back, but how can you make more money? How can you get your dream job or build your own business? And how do you want what he calls your rich life to actually look like? Because it's got to be, you got to have some sort of clarity on what you actually want to achieve before, because otherwise you'll never know if you achieve it. And in all likelihood, you won't have the motivation or the discipline to actually take the steps to achieve it. And I'll say one more, the simple, what is it? I've got it here somewhere. The Simple Path to Wealth. That's the only book out of those that I haven't actually read, because I always knew when people recommended it that it recommended and made a case for investing in index funds. And I strongly agree with that. So I just didn't race to pick it up because I'm like, I agree. So, but it's here and I'm starting to get through it. Those are a few that I recommend.
I ask a question, while you're investing in yourself, I often, even myself, I sometimes get caught up in this idea of investing in yourself, because sometimes you consume so much information, you don't necessarily apply it. You go
Oh yeah,
courses and conferences, you read books,
Mm.
books, but the biggest mistake or biggest thing that people I find is that people don't know how to apply it, and they don't apply it as soon enough.
I'm writing this down because that is such a great question. I want to make sure I don't forget it because, like, you're totally right. People, and I've done this before too. You learn so much, you take in and you consume so much, and it sounds great, but yeah, so many people don't apply it. Oh, sorry, I didn't know if I cut you off from your question though.
No. I'm waiting for you to answer it.
Yeah. There's and for listeners who I just pulled out a piece of paper so I could write down Dami's point and question because it's so great, and I want to make sure that I mention it more to on social media and in my email list and everything. Okay, so part of the reason that you would consume so much and not take action is because you don't really know where to start or what your next right move is. So, for example, when I first recognized that I didn't know the first thing about marketing, which is essential if you want to build your own business, when you don't know what direction you need to, what actions you actually need to take, I remember I bought maybe like the top 5 marketing books on Amazon. The One Page Marketing Plan was one of them by Alan Dibb. I love that book. But there were others on copywriting, on SEO. And I'm like, I don't know what SEO is. I don't know what copywriting is. I don't know, Traffic Secrets by Russell Brunson. Like, I just don't know where to start. So you're consuming all this stuff. And I actually almost think that sometimes it's a prerequisite for gaining clarification, because once I started to understand what marketing was, I realized that I could focus on a couple things at a time, or one thing at a time. And at some point you've got to pull the trigger as well, because there's a grace period as you start learning something or trying to accomplish something where, sure, consume as much as you can, get an idea for it, but start before you, I don't want to say start before you feel like you're ready, because if you're honest with yourself, you know that you can start without being perfect. Start before you're ready to be perfect, not necessarily before you're ready. And continue to prioritize new information to be information that can help you take the next right step, the next action, because it starts off just, you don't know where to start, so you consume everything. And now when I get book recommendations, I love reading, but if it's not entirely relevant to what I'm working on right now, I put it to the side to when it can be more relevant, or if I want to read it more recreationally.
Well, so that's actually great advice. That's very great advice on that. And I guess my question, to wrap this up, where do you see yourself in like 5 to 10 years?
Honestly, I have no freaking idea, because I've tried to, in different moments throughout my life, I've tried to like put out these plans, or I know different things that I want to, I know the life that I eventually, different aspects of the life that I want to live. But to put a timeline on it, like, it could come a lot sooner, it could come a lot later, and I'm not going to beat myself up over it either way. So 5 to 10 years, I really don't know. I know that in time, I will be spending more time in more open spaces, particularly fields, like rolling hills fields. I love the sun and just being outside with a cup of coffee on an early morning where, you can hear the birds, and it's so peaceful. That's like my happy place. For some people, it's the mountains or the beach. And for me, it's like open fields with rolling hills, green grass, and, nice breeze. Like I'll be spending more time doing some of that. It's also going to be connecting with more people who are ambitious, going after just going after what they want in life, particularly adventuring. Like, I'm going to be doing more hiking and stuff too, because I love that. And I love just going on adventures. And I know for sure I will be meeting and interacting with more people that are doing that as well.
Well said. That's well said. I definitely want to say thank you again, Chris, for coming on this podcast and sharing your story. With those who are listening, I hope you guys definitely take action. Before we close it off, I definitely want to ask, do you have any word of wisdom for a listener that's listening today?
Well, it's Wealth in Christ, the Wealth in Christ podcast. So I would love to I love connecting with other, I'll say, Christians, followers of Christ, people who are really trying to live their life by faith. And in terms of, so if you want to reach out, please do. I can give my contact info. In terms of words of wisdom, I suppose if you are not where you want to be, like if you're living a life where you are not entirely satisfied, um, recognize two things. The first is that you can be at peace with where you are and still want to achieve greater things. So for myself, years ago, I think, and even now, I still want to achieve more things in life. But for the last, I don't know how many years, I've had a peace that I didn't, way back. And there's nothing wrong with wanting more, but it shouldn't be at the expense of today's peace. And I don't mean happiness. Happiness is fleeting. Sometimes you're happy, sometimes you're sad. But if you can have a general peace, just a general joy about life, that should be something that you're working on in addition to the physical and practical changes that you're trying to bring into your life.
Well, that's well said. That's well said. And where can people connect with you offline?
Yeah, you can check me out on TikTok. I'm having a whole bunch of fun there. It's Chris Allen Hanna with an underscore. That's my tag. No H at the end of that, Hanna. And right now it's kind of dominated by blackjack stuff. People are loving hearing about my time as a card counter and professional blackjack player. I'm going to be incorporating more and more financial stuff like we talked about, investing in yourself and all that. You can also check out chrisallenhanna.com if you want to hop on my email list. I provide more exclusive sort of strategies and tips with my email list than I do with everyone else.
I definitely want to say thank you again, Chris, for your time. And those who are listening, like always, I hope you guys take action. Just don't listen to this podcast or this as another interview. But actually take action. Reevaluate where you are currently right now, and definitely find peace in it. In what you're doing. If you guys haven't yet, you guys can definitely get my free investing guide, which will show you how you can get started in the stock market. My website, wealthandchristbrand.com. And if you haven't subscribed to us on YouTube or Apple Podcasts or Spotify, wherever you get your podcast, please do so. Tell a friend and stay tuned for next week's episode.